It is Friday, and as promised, a new video for the Football First podcast for our Facebook page. But unfortunately, instead of previewing the Bucks, the news from yesterday was the loss of Ted Thompson, former Packers general manager, who passed away at the age of 68. And for us to preview the Bucks, and again, the NFC Championship, as Packer fans, we're all excited. You can hear our preview as part of our last podcast episode that dropped on Tuesday with Eric Drews from Green and Gold Forever, and then Chad. We break down the Bucks game, keys to the game, and there's plenty to read out there on the topic. But it seemed timely and only fitting that we talk about Ted Thompson. And I know in a lot of times, right, in death, people are remembered in a way that maybe they're not appreciated during life. And I don't want to get dramatic and act like, that's the case. I mean, Ted Thompson was the general manager of a football team. And while that's really, really important, right, it's a game, right? But I think as Packer fans, sometimes, you have to take a step back and you have to see, this guy that cut his teeth, right, with the Packers underneath Ron Wolf, since 1992, as assistant director of pro personnel, became the director of pro personnel from 93 to 97. That ability of his, he was ultimately with the Packers till 99 as the director of player personnel before leaving for the Seahawks. That run, to help build the Packers with Ron Wolf to a Super Bowl champion, to a team that appeared in the Super Bowl the next year and lost, unfortunately, to a team that I thought in 98 was as good as any Packer team that we had, but lost in the playoffs. Thompson learned the role and he was committed to the Packers organization at that time to help get the Packers to that point before leaving for the Seahawks, before eventually returning back as the GM in 2005. And I think sometimes what we forget, right, is we look at, what we've had as Packer fans, over the last really 25 years, if you count since 96. And for people to understand that the history of that not only is special and unique to have that sustained run, but it's also unlikely, and it's not common. And when Thompson took over as GM in 2005 after replacing Mike Sherman, they had major issues. I mean, the Packers were over the salary cap going into the 2005 season. I think many people remember he declined to re-sign Marco Rivera. They had to release Mike Wall and Darren Sharper, who, unfortunately, right, we got to see Darren Sharper play for the Vikings. And his first draft pick was was Aaron Rodgers. And I think the situation in which the Packers were in when he became the general manager is not what Ron Wolf left for Mike Sherman. And while Mike Sherman was a good coach, his reign as GM put the Packers in a position where, I'm not saying Thompson had to completely rebuild, but he definitely was replacing a guy for a reason as general manager, right? A role in which he was not succeeding. And the Packers are in the Super Bowl in 2010, right? Not only are they in the Super Bowl, they successfully transitioned from a Hall of Fame quarterback, one of the greatest of all time, one of the most beloved players of all time, to Aaron Rodgers. And when hard decisions had to be made, including the hardest one, transitioning from a beloved player to a guy that ultimately you could not pass on at 24, he did it. And he stuck to his guns, and he supported Aaron and put talent around Aaron and put them in the Super Bowl. And I understand that late in his career, he had more draft misses. I understand that he didn't use free agency maybe as much as we would have wanted him to supplement the roster, to maximize, Rodgers getting a championship in 2010 at 27, 28 years old. And now potentially his first return to the Super Bowl could be, after a win this Sunday, right? Has not been back since, right? And Ted Thompson a lot of times was viewed by us as fans as a failure because ultimately, they didn't get back to the Super Bowl. minus the fact, they played in an NFC champion. They were 15-1 in 2011, lost a playoff game to the Giants at home, right? They were minutes away from winning in 2014, and a calamity of things happened that were beyond the control of the general manager. The 2016 team was lightning in a bottle, made it to the NFC Championship. Probably not a team that talent-wise could compete with the Falcons. And that's what we're going to remember, right? We're going to remember, that Rodgers is 1-4 in championship games, and with the 49ers obviously being last year's, which Thompson wasn't the GM. But what I think people have to remember is the consistency in which the organization has won and the role that the general manager plays in that. Because the factors that happen on the field, are controlled by the coaches, are controlled by the players, are controlled by situations sometimes that, are beyond their control. How does the general manager equip that team to succeed? And the reality is, since 2010, the Packers have the second best record behind the Patriots. They have 8 playoff appearances. The Pats have 3 Super Bowls. But the Packers have won. The Seahawks have won. The Ravens have won. The Chiefs have won. The Broncos have won. The Eagles have won, and the Giants have won. So what are we saying there? Beyond the Patriots and their success, a bunch of teams have won the Super Bowl. We have seen parity. We've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams won a Super Bowl. And one team won multiple Super Bowls, and the Packers were one of those teams. And I think, the thing to focus on is all of those teams are organizations that built long-term consistency. The only team that's not in the top 10 for winning percentage since 2010 is the Giants, a team that caught lightning in a bottle and won a championship that year, right? And Packers were the victim of that. So long-term success and getting yourself in the playoffs is a hallmark of what Ron Wolf built by rebuilding the Packers, what Ted Thompson had to bring back to Green Bay to bring that consistency, to bring that standard back, and to put the Packers in a position that they're in today. I mean, Sunday, hopefully, right, we can all put a bow on the regular season and the playoffs, and now transition to the Super Bowl week by getting to see our team play either the Bills or the Chiefs, because the Packers complete the NFC and become the NFC champion. As fans, that's what you have to ask for. Only one team leaves happy every year. The Packers have consistently put themselves in position because of the role of a general manager like Ron Wolf, then Ted Thompson, and now Brian Gutekunst, to consistently win football games and give them a chance to get hot in the playoffs and win a Super Bowl. And as a fan, I'm grateful for that. I'm thankful for that. Ted Thompson was someone I absolutely, as a young coach, and then a guy that wanted to be a scout, young in my life, looked up to. And I had the opportunity to sit at the NFL Combine, with the Packers staff, and kind of sit behind them as John Dorsey and Elliott Wolf and all these guys are talking, and I'm sitting behind him and kind of sort of with them, but not really, because I'm an outsider that's just trying to get a job. And coming in behind all those guys is Ted Thompson. He sits down, 2 seats next to me with a cup of coffee, and there I am watching, Matt Leinart and Vince Young and that quarterback class, and I think running backs came in that day too, get their hand measurements and their heights and their weights, and you hear these guys talk through, their body makeup and how their shoulders look and all this type of stuff. And I just remember thinking to myself, and I had, secured my internship for the summer and got to sit with my team, and I remember leaving, for lunch and getting the hell out of there, of the RCA Dome, and, tell my Uncle Dave the story who I went to Indianapolis with, and it was one of the coolest experiences ever, but he was just a down-to-earth dude from my limited time I got to meet him. And when I would go to Packer practice, when Dorsey was still, with the Packers, I would find a way to say hi to him, give him a heads up, whatever. And, the amount of times that people would come over and say hi and introduce themselves and shake their hands was few and far between. But the Packers guys did, they did. They introduced themselves. He came over and said hi. And if he was walking with Sam Seal or he was walking with Brian Gutekunst, or he was walking with Ted Thompson, he'd be like, hey, this is John. And they'd shake your hand. And you're just a college coach watching practice on the sideline because you get this access and this pass. And I think that's what being a Packer guy is, right? It's the organization is bigger than you. And Ted Thompson always felt that way. He felt he was a scout that got to be a GM, right? And it's sad. It's unfortunate, right? Like any death. But what I saw yesterday was people maybe finally showing gratitude as this team that's playing in the NFC Championship has a lot of Thompson's fingerprints still on it. And if you look at the picture behind me, right? I mean, you look at Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, Kenny Clark, David Bakhtiari, Mason Crosby. They're all his guys. And his last month, he signed Devontae Adams to an extension. He signed Corey Linsley to an extension. He signed Robert Tonyan to the practice squad. He drafted Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. And as a result, that core is in place. Brian Gutekunst has done an amazing job putting other players around it, surrounding that core with a team that I think is the best roster in the NFC and has a chance to win the Super Bowl. So that's it, man. We've joked, about doing the Ted Thompson episode so Chad could give his opinion on how Ted didn't surround, Favre with enough weapons. And the reality is the first time that we're doing the Ted Thompson episode is after his passing, which is sad. But if you're a Packer fan, the reality of it is, if you're watching this and you're a Packer fan, I think it's really important, the gravity of understanding what we've all been able to witness and be part of as fans for the last, almost 30 years. Because that's not normal. And people like Ron Wolf and Ted Thompson and Brian Gutekunst are a big part of that. Regardless of if you like their draft pick or you would have signed this free agent or, you should have traded for this guy, right? There's a lot of things they got to balance. But the Packers have always equipped the organization with a competent, talented person that we should all have our faith in. And Ted was one of them. So that's it for this week.